Good morning, folks. This is Frank Liu. Welcome back to FINA1221 Introduction to Finance Week 6 lecture. I hope everyone is well, safe, and sound in this uncertain time. Today we are talking about how to value debt instruments. Before we start, there are three very important announcements to be made. After our lecture last week, a number of students point out that there's a rule for no single assessment component weighing more than 60%. We understood such rule exists, and we clearly wanted the best for our students with less assessments. Anyway, to make everyone happy, we have designed with a new optional assignment that weighs 10%. This assignment will cover contents from weeks 1 to 9, and there will be 15 questions with 5 attempts. The highest mark will be recorded as the final grade for this assignment. This assignment will be available in week 11 for 14 days. As usual, you're more than welcome to post a question on the forum should you have any question about this optional assignment. I suppose not everyone is familiar with the term optional assignment, so our second announcement is about the new total assessment structure. As we discussed last week, our My Finance Labs test now weigh a total of 30%, which absorbs the previous 10% tutorial participation. So for the remaining 70%, it's going to be the maximum of the following two components. It's either going to be the 10% optional assignment plus 60% final exam, or 0% optional assignment plus 70% final exam. So just to give you an example, so here for simplicity, we have excluded the My Finance Lab task component, right? Let's just say James achieves 67% in the optional assignment and 72% in the final exam. Then the final grade is based on his performance in the final exam only and excludes the OA component because on the point basis, he did better in final exam. So then final exam takes the whole 70%. In comparison, Jane achieves 85% in the optional assignment and 80% in the final exam. Then the final grade is going to be based on both components, where 10% comes from the 85% of the OA and 60% coming from the 80% in the final exam. All right, hopefully that examples clarify the point. So here, the assignment is completely optional. You can do it. You don't have to do it. If you did well and if you did better than your final exam, it will count 10%. But if your final exam actually outperforms your optional assignment, then your final exam weighs 70%. All right, so you'll be better off with the current structure. The third announcement is about the unlike mock missed exam. So the Vice Chancellor announced a new timetable for our teaching weeks so that next week, which was originally going to be the week 7, will be the first week of a 2-week teaching break rather than a 1-week teaching break. So given that we cannot schedule any teaching activities during the teaching break, technically speaking, we will need to move this online mock exam to the actual week 7, which will now be 20th of April 2020. Which is like 3 million years away given what's happening around the world at the moment. So this is a difficult decision, but we decided to run it at 10 a.m. as the original time. So 10 a.m. on Monday, 6th of April 2020, the first Monday of your 2-week non-teaching break. So the main reason is that a mock exam is meant to be a wake-up call for people to catch up on our learning progress, or to revisit concepts that you have not acquired a reasonable understanding. So given that it is self-evaluated, 0% weighting, and completely voluntary, we thought this wake-up call should come the earlier the better, right? Therefore, we decided to run it on a non-teaching day, 6th of April 2020. So if you cannot make it for whatever reason, but you're not supposed to be traveling during that week, right? But let's say if you cannot make it, and it's okay, as the session will now be recorded and will be made available on LMS. And if you really hate this idea of knowing there's something going on during the non-teaching break, even if it was 0% completely voluntary, and if you're not happy about it, please let me know. I'll try to address that. All right. So this week we are examining how to value bonds, which can be viewed as a simple application of interest rate and present value, right? Um, Please note that with the new non-teaching weeks, we have changed the due dates for MLFL test 5 and 6. So here you can see that there's a new date. Oops, go back. New date. Over here, here's a new due date, right? Simply put, you now have more time to complete test 5 and test 6 than before, and you are better off. So please don't freak out whenever you see there's a red box around them. All right, just need to be careful. You have to finish them, all right? So in this week, we will come across with using Excel as a necessary tool to solve for use to maturity, and then the internal rate of return in week 8. The authors of the textbook make a special version to help solve questions in chapter 6 and 8. But what if you want to understand the logic behind it for more general use? What if one day your boss telling you to say, so for you to maturity, you say, hang on, let me grab the formula I learned from my textbook. Well, it's gonna be too late, right? So it's better to understand the logic behind it. So what I've done here is that I provide an alternative explanation on how to solve for IRR, which we haven't actually defined yet or introduced yet, and U to maturity, which will be discussed today, using Excel in the spreadsheet IRR and U to maturity explanation by frank.xlsx, available in the week 6 folder in LMS. Right? Please definitely go through the spreadsheet in your own time before you attempting tutorial questions chapter 6, problem 11a. I was trying to make this Excel spreadsheet self-explanatory and self-contained, so a lot of writings and examples over there, so definitely read it, right? And I understand that not everyone pays the expensive Microsoft tax. And what should you do without Excel? Um, well, if you don't have Excel, and if you don't have the Mac version of Numbers, you should then consider try the free Google Doc with GoSeek add-on, right? So here is a screenshot of one of the videos that you can find on YouTube, which is called "Use the GoSeek add-on in Google Sheets." So yeah, please definitely Google it about how you can use Google Sheet and using the GoSeek add-on, right? And it's pretty much work the same way as Excel, and which means you can use that to solve the questions, to follow the examples that we provided in the previous slide, which is over here. Oops, that one, this one, this Excel spreadsheet. There are 7 learning objectives in this week's lecture. So first of all, we want to identify the cash flows for both coupon bonds and zero coupon bonds and calculate the value for each type of bond. And then we need to calculate the yield to maturity for both coupon and zero coupon bonds and interpret its meaning for each. And given coupon rate and yield to maturity, determine whether a bond will be sold at a premium or discount or on par. And the fourth point here is to illustrate a change in bond price that will occur as a result of changes in the interest rate. And you want to differentiate between the effect of such a change on long-term versus short-term bonds, so which means the sensitivity of the duration. And then assess the credit worthiness of a corporate bond using its bond ratings, define what I mean by default risk. So this is the first time that we come across to a very important term in finance and economics, which is risk, default risk here. And then the last one is calculate the price of a coupon bond using the law of one price and a series of zero coupon bonds by replicating a coupon paying bond using zero coupon bonds. All right. So all that may sound very intimidating, and but we'll go through it. So the structure of our lecture today is rather straightforward. So we'll start with learning some bond basic and then move on to a number of advanced discussions. So bond basic, go to bond advanced. And for a lot of you, you'll be saying, geez, I don't get it. But that's fine, right? This is one of the weeks that not supposed to confuse you as long as you get you understand all the terminologies. All right, let's have a quick recap. So in week 5, one of the main concepts we learned was the interest rate expressions. So, you know, effective annual rate versus annual percentage rate. So what I have here is just a quick, a quick diagram or quick summary. So in EAR is effective annual rate. So almost always you will see that is expressed as R% per annum compounded yearly. But of course, most likely you will just say 10% EAR. People understand. So over here, the expression of the interest rate and the compounding frequency, if they match and if they happen to be 1 year, and that will be effective annual rate. And given people's preference towards expressing everything in annual term, when expression of interest rate is 1 year per annum, but the compounding frequency isn't 1 year, then that means you have an annual percentage rate, such as R% per annum compounded monthly, 12% per annum compounded quarterly. So as soon as you see that expression of the interest rate, which is being 1 year, differs from the compounding frequency, then that's an APR. And why is that important? Well, because we know that we cannot use APR. We have to use periodic interest rate. And the periodic interest rate here is just R% per period, compounding periodically. So here, the importance, the link is that the periodic rate times number of periods per year defines the annual percentage rate. So which means APR equals to the periodic rate times number of periods per year. And that's a quick math people can do in their head. Say if I have 1% per month, then people can say, oh, if it's 1% per month, then that would be 12% per year compounded monthly, right? Because 1% times 12 is rather straightforward. And over here, if you see the definition for periodic rate very clearly, it's R% per period compounded periodically. And that means expression of interest rate is the same as the compounding frequency being a particular period, like 1 month, 1 quarter. And on that point, you can see that the effective annual rate really is just a special example of a periodic rate, being a period being 1 year, right? And which interest rate do we use? And here's an important question: which interest rate do you use? So some students actually emailed me last week, as well as posting questions on the forum saying, do we always have to convert everything to EAR? The simple answer is no, you don't. You only need EAR when your cash flow frequency happens to be yearly, which means you will want to use an interest rate that matches with the cash flow frequency. So if you have monthly cash flows, then you find monthly interest rate. If you make a payment every fortnight, then we use a fortnightly interest rate. And EAR is only important in the sense that when you're trying to compare with different interest rate, say if you want to compare a 1 month periodic rate comparing to a 1 quarter quarterly rate, you can either convert the 1 month rate to quarter rate, or you can convert both to an EAR, right? So then, and then you can compare the magnitude of that. We have an example in your workshop that I made last Friday. So there was a question about comparing different interest rate. There's one credit card that the loans made from the bank comparing to the rate that charged by your parents, right? In that question, we were comparing two interest rates expressed in different compounding frequencies, and one of the approaches was to convert them into EAR. But you can see from that example that we can also compare them on quarterly basis. All right, so definitely need to make sure that you definitely get this right, which interest rate to be used, because from these formulas that we learned in week 4, all this interest rate over here, like R here, R there, R here, and G there, all this is related to the frequency of the cash flow. So which means here, even though it's called annuity, it doesn't have to be on an annual term, as long as it follows a periodic pattern, right? If it's going to be a monthly cash flow, you can still use that formulas, but you want to use a monthly interest rate as well as a monthly growth rate, right? And that's what we learned in week 4, what we learned with Daniel. So make sure that you can draw a timeline for perpetuity, annuity, growing perpetuity, growing annuity. And if you're still not sure about this, right, there is a very important thread on discussion forum 01, which I put like Frank L important. Definitely go check that one out. So such that you can understand how to do this kind of questions in a general sense when your cash flow looks like an annuity, but it isn't an annuity, right? How do you convert that? All right, to give you an overview about what's going to happen in the next 3 weeks and and how that connected to what we learned before, that's again looking at this simple equation. So in week 3, what we did was we're looking at equality to show why the present value can be measured as the cash flow divided by 1 plus RF power to n. Why is the present value equal to this kind of cash flow? That's what we learned in week 3, because we're assuming everyone can be borrow and lend at the same rate offered by an institution, which is called bank, such that the bank help us move the money forward and backward. In week 4, we emphasize, we examine the cases where you have single cash flows, more than one cash flow, and if you have a pattern of cash flows, what do you do? And in week 5, which we did last week, we're focusing on the interest rate, right? If you have interest rate expressing in a different expressions like per month, per quarter, but you want to be per fortnight, what do you do, right? And of course, we talk about nominal interest rate and the real interest rate. That's something that we'll cover in week 5 as well. So gotta be careful, right? If your cash flow here is nominal, then the interest rate has to be nominal interest rate. If your cash flow is a real cash flow, which means you maintains the purchasing power, then the interest rate RF here has to be real interest rate. That's nothing to do with that's nothing to do with APR, EAR, because APR, EAR are just the way how you express them. But here, RF can be a nominal, can be a real. So don't be confused with that. So, after learning this very important equation, we have 3 applications. Application 1 is what we do this week, is to valuing bonds using this formula. After the 2-week term break, we're going to learn how to value equity, stocks, again using this very simple equation, and which is this part of application wrapped up by the 2-week investment decision discussion with Daniel to think about how can we compare different investments. All right. So now we're going to move on to the first part of the lecture today, which is bond basic. We're going to learn about bond terminology, zero coupon bond, discount, and premium. Just a warning, there will be a lot of new terminologies. And, I usually tell my students saying, bond, like when I did bond study, I found it really boring. And then it turned out to be correct, because once I started working in the finance industry, people saying bond is boring, and you would say, why is that boring? Why is bond boring? Well, there's another term for this kind of debt instrument. They're also known as fixed income securities. Fixed income securities. Before we move on, have a guess what we mean by fixed income securities. Well, the fixed income securities here means that at the time that you're buying into this bond, you know exactly what you're going to get. You know what kind of coupon payments you will be receiving, which we will talk about, and you know what's the end value you're going to be getting. Right? The only thing that you're not sure is the price that you're going to be paying, right? Whether that's going to be a fair price or not. But apart from that, everything else is determined. So which means that, comparing to equities, probably not many of you have invested in share market, but you could imagine if I'm buying into BHP, I mean the BHP share price is not going to be growing at a risk-free rate, which means today $36, tomorrow gonna be 37, but next Tuesday could be 28 because there's something bad happened to the share market. But in 2 weeks' time, it may jump back up to 45, given there was a big demand surge from China, right? So what I mean by that is that the return is not predictable in the sense that, the BHP may, share price may jump, may go down, and may pay you dividend, they may not pay you dividend, but in the bond context, in the debt instrument context, or also known as fixed income securities context, your future income is fixed. You already know it. That's why people call it boring. All right, but don't think that is because it's boring. It's gonna be not profitable. You can still make profits out of it, right? People still make millions of dollars profit out of trading bonds, and it doesn't mean it's easy, right? All right, let's move on to the next slide. So bond is a debt instrument sold by the borrower to a lender. It promises periodic interest payments and repayment of principal at maturity, right? So from the definition, you can see how that's related to what we learned in week 4 because it promises periodic interest payment. So which means, what we learn about, like we know or learn about annuity. Annuity is a what? Is a stream of cash flows that pays every period, right? And here in the bond study, each payment is almost always the same, right? Except the last payment, which is the one that involved with principal. So here we have a whole bunch of terms. We have bond certificate, which states the terms of the bond, means what's going to be the face value, what's going to be the coupon, what's going to be the maturity day, and so on and so on. That's the bond certificate. And the face value here, face value, is the principal to be repaid at the end. Usually 1,000, 100, 100,000, a million. Maturity date is when face value is to be repaid. You can think about maturity date is like the life of the bond. If your maturity date is gonna be on 31st of December 2020, that means we're about 9 months away from its maturity date, right? And the term here is related to what I just discussed, 9 months time remaining until the maturity date. Coupon here, coupon is the promised interest payments on a regular basis. So most likely to be every 6 months. You also see every quarter, right? But you don't get more frequent than that. And coupon rate is the amount of each coupon payment expressed as an APR. So basically saying coupon rate is coupon divided by face value. Where you can also think about this, right? The coupon payment equals to the coupon rate times the face value divided by number of coupon payment per year. So we have an example to show you how to calculate that. But let me just pause for a second and get you to think about this important question. In finance, we talk about interest rate. We spent a whole week dealing with interest rate last week. But which term here on this slide is for the interest payment? Interest rate. Which term is the time value of money? Which term is for the interest rate? You can pause the video, or you can just think along. Which one? Is it a bond certificate? Is it a face value? Is it a maturity day? Is it a term? Is it coupon rate, coupon payment? I guess a lot of you may be very tempted to say, well, that looks like gonna be a coupon coupon rate, because that's the one. There's a term called interest payment there. But well, the answer is no. None of this term is the term for interest rate, time value of money. None of them, all right? And you would say, why? Jeez. This is the difficult part. This is the difficult bit of the bond, right? Because there are so many terms, but none of this term is related to interest rate. And let me just elaborate a bit later on. All right, here are some visual examples of what a bond looks like. So a bond has been, has been with us for many, many, many years. So we have some examples of coupon paying bond and zero coupon bond. So zero coupon bond is like for example, like this one. There's only one payment at the end, right? One payment at the end, and for the rest of it, is, for example, take that one, autoballs, badges. So this one, you can see that the reason why it's called coupon paying bond is because there are so many coupons over here, right? And so what happens back then is that when people buying this bond, so let's just say if this one pays every 6 months, looks like it, because it looks like it's got a half over there, means every 6 months. So every 6 months, whoever is currently holding this coupon paying bond will tear off one of the coupon. Like like what happens over here, you know, like what happened over there. They would just tear off one of the coupon and then mail that coupon to the issuer, usually a company or a government. You mail that to the Treasury Department, to the company, along with your address. And when the issuer of the bond receives it, and they see your name and your address, and they see the coupon, they verify the coupon, and they say, okay, this is the real one, and then they will mail you back the check. And then you will get the money by, putting the check back to the bank, right? And this is how they do it. Because, and you would say, why would people do that? Because back then there was no computer, right? You can't digitally track everything. So, which means, so let's just say again, take this one as example, and you can see here, and you can see why people call this coupon paying bond, because you can count how many coupons left. So let's just say over here you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 8. You have 8 in the third column. That means originally that have 24. 3 times 8, 24. There were originally 24 coupons. So this one, so there's got 10 coupons left. So which means someone has already claimed 14 coupons. What does that mean? That means no one needs to hold this coupon paying bond forever. When they don't want it, right? So this person was the original buyer and they already claimed 14 payments, 14 regular smaller interest payment. But they say, okay, they no longer want to hold this bond because they need money to do something. They need a big lump sum of money to say, they want to buy a house, right? If they wanted to buy a house, they can sell this bond to someone else. And the other buyer of the bond would say, okay, let's see, you got a face value which hasn't been claimed, and you have about 10 coupons left. So based on that, I can work out what's the value of this bond, because there are 10 payments remaining as well as the principal, right? So that is a very, very original way of keeping track of the future payments, right? Nowadays, very straightforward. Everything is digitally backed. You see everything online, how many payments left. But back then, people have to use this technology because everyone has to tear off the coupon, mail to the company mail back the check, right? That's how you do it. Alrighty. So we start with a simple example. The simplest example is a zero coupon bond. As the name suggests, a zero coupon bond does not make coupon payments. It always sells at a discount, which is a price lower than face value. So they are also called pure discount bonds. You will say, okay, what do you mean by selling a discount? Well, just keep going. Let's just say, okay, suppose that a 1-year risk-free zero coupon bond with a $100,000 face value has an initial price of $96618.36. The cash flow will be like this. So here, there's a few key terms. 1 year determines its maturity date will be in 1 year, so the term will be 1 year left. Risk-free here means there's no default risk, which means you will get it. You will get your money back, right? Zero coupon bond means there is no other payments except just paying back the face value, paying back the principal. So the cash flow is like this. At the start, the initial price is $96,000. At the end, whoever bought this zero coupon bond will get paid $100,000. So although the bond pays no interest, you can see that your compensation is the difference between the initial price and the face value. So here, roughly $3,381.64, and that's the interest part. But what is your interest rate, right? What is the interest rate here? That's what we're gonna find out. So here, the price of a zero coupon bond equals to, so that's a definition. The price equals to the face value. So here, I have called FV, but don't get confused with FV with future value. So here, FV is related to face value, the principal, divided by 1 plus U to maturity n power to n. So in this simple example, what we have here is 96,618.36 equals to 100,000 divided by 1 plus U to maturity. And the U to maturity here is called the return earned from investing in the bond. And this term is the term for the interest rate. The yield to maturity here is the term for the interest rate. If you can see the red writing over here, this is the discount rate, the interest rate that sets the present value of the promised bond payments equal to the current market price of the bond. And you would say, why wouldn't people just say yield to maturity straight away? Well, technically speaking, whenever people negotiate a bond, given that you know what a face value is, which is 100,000, the only thing that you will be negotiating is the price that you're going to be paying, which means someone may be happy to pay 97,000, someone may be happy to pay 95,000. So in this case, different price would then lead to a different implied return, which comes at the yield to maturity. So here, the yield to maturity is an interest rate that such that you can set the equality, such that the yield to maturity here is defined is an interest rate that makes this P equals to FV divided by this, right? It's in an interest rate that gives the equality of the price to be the same as the face value divided by 1 plus interest power to n. So here's a formula that you can rearrange it. You don't have to memorize this formula because it's actually quite straightforward, because if you rearrange it, you get it. So yield to maturity here equals to, if you rearrange the orange formula, the one on the top, equals to face value divided by price, power to 1 over n minus 1. So here in this particular example, the yield to maturity would be 0.035. And given this is a 1-year zero coupon bond, essentially that just means it's 3.5% per year, which is EAR, right? Because it's per year. There's only one. And so this 3.5%, and let me just stress that again. This 3.5% is an interest rate that gives the equality for the price to be the same as the face value divided by the 1 plus interest, right? So here, although we haven't officially introduced internal rate of return, that will be discussed in week 8 with Daniel, but let me just quickly talk about it. So internal rate of return is an interest rate that sets the net present value of the cash flows equals to 0. And the IRR of an investment in a bond is given a special name. So yield to maturity is a special term of IRR in a context of bond. In most cases that dealing with investment with multiple non-regular cash flows, it is impossible to solve for IRR or solve for yield to maturity using simple algebra. So in most cases, you'll be using Excel for a financial calculator. So let me just stress this equation again. Sorry, this concept again. So here, if you think about this, is that say face value equals to over 1 plus yield to maturity power to n minus price equals to 0. Because if you think about the previous example, this is the price you paid and you get his money back. So the yield to maturity here, yield to maturity, is an equation that is a number that sets this equation to be 0. So the yield to maturity is the one that sets this equation to be 0. Right? That's how we define yield to maturity. It's unlinked. All right. Okay, let me give you an example. Suppose a risk-free zero coupon bond with $1,000 face value, which matures in about 1.5 years' time, is currently trading for $9.40. So what is the yield to maturity expressed as an EAR or as a 6 months APR? And what is the value of the bond 2 months prior to maturity, assuming the same yield to maturity? All right, so normally speaking, for a coupon bond, if it's risk-free, then the yield to maturity does not change because there's no default risk, right? It doesn't so it doesn't matter how close you're getting to the maturity. There's no changing the likelihood of default. So such that means U to maturity would always stay the same. That means the interest rate, the discount rate. If you're not sure about what you mean by U to maturity, U to maturity here is just a discount rate, right? So that just means the discount rate, the interest rate, the one I'm using for calculation of interest, is gonna stay the same. So how do we find out U to maturity? So here, you can look at that. The U to maturity here equals to the face value divided by P over 1 over n minus 1. And if you're not sure about that, let's just write it together, right? So here, draw the timeline 0, 1 year, 1.5 year, and you will get $1,000 in 1.5 years time, and currently trading at 940. So which means you have to pay 940. So how do we make this equation 0? So that means that is saying, well, present value of investing 940 plus 1,000 divided by 1 plus U to maturity. If that was expressed in year, how many 1.5 years do you have? How many 1 year do you have in 1.5 years? Sorry, how many 1 year do you have in 1.5 years time? I mean, it sounds like a tricky question, but it shouldn't be, right? That's 1.5 years. And the U to maturity is what sets this equation to be 0, right? That's the function of the U to maturity. So set this equation to be 0, right? So rearrange it, you get 1,000 by 1 plus, I just say y, 1.5 equals to 940. Rearrange it, 1 plus y, 1.5 equals to 1,000 over 940. And keep rearranging. Y equals to 1,000, 940, power to 1 over 1.5. Y equals to 1,000, 940, 1 over 1.5 minus 1. And that gives you 0.0421. And what is that interest rate? And that interest rate given here, we're talking about year because there's 1.51 year. And that means this 0.0421 is essentially a yearly measure. EAR equals to 4.21%. Right? And so that answers the first part of the question as an EAR. But how about a 6 months APR? So a 6 months APR, 6 months APR, and how do we do it? Okay, let's just redo this again. So if it's 6 months, all right, 1 and 2 and 3, and each one of them is 6 months. So such that, because here we're looking at 1.5 years, so that means this 3 of 6 months, let's just separate that out. 3 of 6 months, that becomes 1.5 years, such that each interest rate would be a 6 months interest rate. So doing the same equation again, present value equals to minus 940 plus 1,000 divided by 1 plus U to maturity, let's say Y2, power to, what's the term here? The term here is 3, because there are three 6 months. And that gives you 0. Why? Because that's the definition of the U to maturity. Is the interest is a rate, is a number that sets this equation to be 0, right? And you can solve it. That becomes Y2 equals to 1,000 divided by 940 over 1/3 minus 1, and that gives you 2.08%. So that means 6 months is gonna be 2.08%. But the question here is to say, as a 6 months APR, and this is a periodic rate. So R 6 months equals to 2.08%. The corresponding APR which is going to be 2 times 6 months, because there was 2 6-month period in 1 year, and that becomes 4.16%. And that's the answer we'll be looking for. All right, for part two, he's saying, what is the value of the bond 2 months prior to maturity, assuming the same E to maturity? So here, that means you have 2 months left, right? I mean, the term has 2 months left. It's slightly different color. 0, 2 months. Given we have 2 interest rate, this is yearly interest rate, and this is 6 months interest rate. They mean the same thing, right? That's what we learned in week 5. They mean the same thing. So let's just say over here, we have 2 months. There's 2 months left for this bond. We can either express as 1/6 of 1 year, or we can express it as 1/3 of 6 months, right? Why is that important? Well, it's because we have already found 2 interest rate. One expressed in a year term, one expressed in a 6 month term, right? So given that here we have 2 months, how do we convert that 2 months into a unit that we can recognize using our existing interest rate? So let's just say if we stick with 1/6 months, that just means the interest rate would be 1/6 year, and where EAR is 4.21%. So that means the question is asking for what is the present value of this, what is the price of this, and given that you know the face value is going to be 1,000, so here again what we have here is that present value, sorry, that's the price, not present value, equals to price, because you have to pay to get it, equals to 1,000 divided by 1 plus what? 0.0421 power to what? Power to 1/6, right? Power to 1/6. And that equals to 0. Why? Because that's the function of the yield to maturity. It sets the price minus price plus the future income to be 0, right? Solve it, you get price equals to roughly 993.15. Alternatively, you could use present value equals to minus price plus 1,000 divided by, if you want to use the 6 months interest rate, which is 0.0208 power to, except now it's not power to 1/6, it's power to 1/3, because 2 months is 1/3 of 6 months, right? And yet that equals to 0. Why? Because that's the function of the yield to maturity. That is the equation that sets this to be 0. And not surprisingly, the price is the same. All right, let's draw the timeline. So that means the value of the bond 2 months prior to maturity will be 993.15, which is higher than what's originally at 940. You can think about, okay, why is that the case? As now we are approaching the maturity, why is the price a lot higher? Well, think about time value of money. Time value of money tells us that now we are 2 months away from getting our money, compared to previous case where we're 1.5 years away getting from our money. So in this case, because you're so close to getting your money, the interest rate is lower. The interest rate is lower such that the difference of the face value and the price will be a lot smaller, right? Okay, move on to the next one. So that was a simple 0 coupon bond example. Let's now look at a coupon paying bond, right? So coupon paying bond has 2 series of payments. It pays face value at maturity. So here, face value at maturity. Jeez, what happened just then? It pays face value at maturity and This is a very arbitrary term for maturity. You also pay regular coupon interest payments, CPN, and that is like an annuity. All right, so let's have a look at, let's just draw a timeline together. So for coupon paying bond, 0, 1, 2, n. We have, well, first of all, you need to make a payment to start with. You pay price, that's how much you're paying. And then you follow with, you're gonna get coupon payment, coupon payment, coupon payment, you're gonna get coupon payment. You can, as well as a face value. Let me just write FAV. So the coupon payment part here, is very much similar to an annuity, right? Because your first payment is at the end of the first period and is a regular payment and, you know, for end payments. So which means what we can write here is that the amount of income we're gonna receive is CPN, coupon payment, times 1 over this, Y if stand for U to maturity, power to N, as well as a face value to be repaid at the end, N, because we paid minus P dollars to start with. And given here we're using U to maturity, that tells us the present value of this whole income should be 0. Why is 0? That's the definition of U to maturity. Because the U to maturity here is one that says your cash outflows and cash inflows to be 0, right? And that's what defines to give you 0, such that you can then rearrange it to say P dollars, that's the price, equals to, if you move P to the right hand side, equals to CPN times 1 over Y plus Y over N plus face value over 1 plus Y over N. And that is the definition for the price. And moving back to this equation over here, that's the same equation as what we just wrote down. So the U to maturity is a single discount rate that equates the present value of the bond's remaining cash flows to its current price, right? So in a sense, this is your income as the bondholder, and this is the bond price you paid. And the U to maturity here is the one that sets this term, whole term here, to be 0, right? That's the function of U to maturity. And you can, and that's the reason you can see that, well, when you're talking about bond study, that's the tricky bit, because here the U to maturity is not specified on the coupon paying bond. The coupon paying bond will tell you, let's move back to the definition. It tells you the face value, it tells you the coupon rate, it tells you the term, maturity date, it tells you pretty much everything. So it tells you, where are we? It tells you this and this and this. It tells you the coupon payment, it tells you the number of payments left, it tells you the face value, and then the price is the price you're gonna be paying. So when you see a transaction happens, you can tell, okay, that's the price paid. But the thing that didn't specify was the U to maturity, because the U to maturity is an interest rate that set this left hand side equals the right hand side. So then now let's come back to this definition again. So here, although the coupon payment, coupon rate, the coupon here got the term interest in it. It isn't an interest payment per se, but because people receive that regularly, so as a bond holder, you receive the coupon payment on a regular basis. People call that interest payment because it's like bank give you back interest. But this one is nothing to do with the discount rate. So here in the bond world, the discount rate is the yield to maturity such that the present value price is the same as your income. So the yield to maturity here is the reason why it's interest rate is because that is the one that sets the left hand side, the price you paid, to be the same as the present value of your income. All right. Okay, so let's have a look at an example. So the cash flows of a coupon bond. So here we have a U.S. Treasury just issue a 5-year $1,000 bond with a 5% coupon rate and semi-annual coupons. What cash flows will you receive if you hold this bond to maturity? So here we have, what's the term? 5 years. Face value being 1,000. You have 5% coupon rate and semi-annual coupons. Semi-annual coupon just means you get paid a coupon every 6 months. So that just means, so 5% here is just a shorthand notation for saying, well, you're gonna get 2.5% every 6 months, right? Remember, 5% expressed in terms of an APR, but it isn't an interest rate here. It just means, all right, if it's semi-annual, you get 2.5% every 6 months. If it's annual, you'll get 5% per year. All right, so if you draw the timeline, 5 year, every 6 months, that means you have 10 periods. 10 6-month period. And each payment will be face value 1,000 times coupon rate 5% divided by number of payments per year. Well, here is 2, so that means each payment is $25. So you have 25, 25, 25, 25 all the way into the end with an extra 1,000 at the end, right? And it's the cash flows of a coupon bond. So we know that the cash flows in the context of a coupon paying bond is, we'll move back to this equation. So here, let's just have a look. Let's pick a color that we haven't used. Okay, let's pick this. So here we have 1 variable, 2 variables, 3 variables, 4 variables, and 5 variables. So we have 1 variable is price, 2nd variable is coupon payment, 3rd variable is yield to maturity, 4th variable is number of payments left, terms, the 5th variable is face value. So most likely in the scenario that you're going to come across is that I will be given 4 or 5 and solve for the 5th, right? In most cases, you will be given coupon payment, yield to maturity, and face value. You'll ask you to solve for price. And then you can also be given price, coupon payment, number of payment left, face value, and ask you to solve for yield to maturity, right? So that's the typical case in this kind of scenario where you have 5 variables, you're given 4 of the 5, and solve for the 5th. So in this particular example, you want to consider the following semi-annual bond. That means you pay every 6 months. You have the face value, 7 years until maturity, 9% coupon rate, price is 1080.55. What is the bond's yield to maturity? All right, let's just write it out. So in that example, we have face value is 1,000. 7 years until maturity, but is a semi-annual bond. That means N equals to 7 times 2 equals 14. And do we know the price? We know the price. The price equals to 1080.55. Do we know the coupon rate? Yes, we know the coupon rate. The coupon payment equals to face value times coupon rate divided by 2 because semi-annual. That equals to 1,000 times 9% divided by 2, which is $45. The only thing we don't know is yield to maturity. So if you write it out, that becomes 1080.55 equals to $45 times 1 over y times 1 minus 1 plus y power to n here is 14, right? Because 7 years semi-annual, that's 14, plus face value 1000 divided by 1 plus y power to 14. So this question asks you to solve for u to maturity. And I can tell you, it doesn't matter how long you spend in terms of rearranging, you can't solve for y. So unfortunately, you cannot solve for y just using your pen and paper. I mean, not easily. So when I say not easily, it really means you have to do tries and errors. So which means you will just try, okay, well, let's just make y equal to 0.01. And if y equals to 0.01, does the left-hand side equals to the right-hand side? If not, move on to 0.02, 0.03, and so on and so on, right? You can see here it is less than ideal, right? Because that requires you to do this calculation so many times to see whether the right-hand side equals to 1080.55. So we're going to be switching to using Excel to do it. And before we show you how to do it, you may just say, well, Frank, how are we going to do that in exam? Well, tell you what, you're not going to do this in exam. I will not ask you a question requires you to do trials and errors to work out what U to maturity is. It doesn't mean I'm not going to ask you to test your understanding about U to maturity. What I'm saying here is that I will not have a calculation question like this to get you to try every single number until the left-hand side equals the right-hand side, right? I will elaborate that again when we come to exam preparation. But I'm just want to say it again. I will not ask you a calculation question to get you to solve the U to maturity by trials and errors in this way. Although I will still ask you questions about U to maturity to test your understanding of the concept, and in cases where it can be solved, like in the zero coupon paying bond. All right, now let's switch to Excel to see how we can do that in Excel.
All right, now let's open up an Excel spreadsheet. So here I've already put down something here. So U to maturity, I don't know, let's just call it 1% because that's the number that we want to find out. Let's just say it's not 1%, right? 1% and the coupon payment is $45. Where does that come from? That comes from face value times coupon rate 9% divided by 2 because semi-annual bond. So the bond price here, let's just put down a formula. And the formula here is coupon payment times 1 over U to maturity times 1 minus 1 over 1 plus the U to maturity power to how many payments? 14 payments, right? Because 7 years to maturity, that means 14 6 months plus face value divided by 1 plus interest rate power to 14 again. So it's 1455. And our goal here is that given the price is 1080.55, we want to find out a U to maturity to be equal to that. So 1% is not the right answer. 2%, that's getting close. 3%, 4%. As you can see, now is 4% is 4% is 1052, 3% is 1169, so somewhere between. But of course, that can be quite hideous. So what we do here is that we want to use a goal-seek function, and the whole explanation is actually provided in the Excel spreadsheet that I put up on the LMS week 6 folder. So here I'm just going to do a quick demonstration. So you go to data, and there's a what-if analysis. Click that one, goal-seek. So the goal-seek here is that I want to set the cell here, the price, to value, what's the value that we want? 1080.55 by changing U to maturity. Because we want to change that U to maturity such that my price here, G10, going to be equal to the target, 1080.55. And you will go through the whole bunch of iterations, and eventually trials and error tells you that the answer is 3.75%, right? And this is an easy approach, and this is probably an approach that's good enough for you to do any tutorial exercise or MFL test. But if you want to understand let's say for a more general case, what if you can't write in such formulas, right? And you can do here. Here's I have an alternative approach. So an alternative approach is what people do in real life. So here I list out the timeline. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 14. And here is the individual payment, 45, 45, 45 to 1045 at the end. So here I just set the U to maturity to be, say, 1% again. And my present value will be each cash flow divided by 1 plus my interest rate power to my time, corresponding time, power to my corresponding time period, right? But of course, given the yield to maturity is, you want to keep the referencing that same formula, so we put a dollar sign around B19. If you're not sure what that dollar sign means, again, you can read about what I put in the explanation file. And to do that, I'm just gonna drag across over here, so that gives me the present value. And my price is simply the sum of all the individual parts. Remember, after all, you're summing up discounted cash flows. That's 1455. And so the idea here is that it's very similar to what's done before, is that when I provide a what if analysis, my goal seek is that I want to set a cell 1455 to my target 1080.55 by changing the cell yield to maturity, and that will just run a whole bunch of iterations, just tries and errors, and tell me 3.75% is a number that my price will be equals to 1080.55. All right, that's the first half of the question. The second half of the question is saying, suppose its yield to maturity has increased to 10% APR. What is the bond's new price? Well, 10% APR means 5% every 6 months. So if you simply change that, that will tell you the price would go down to $950.5068. Right.
All right, that was the demonstration on Excel. So as just want to emphasize again, the yield to maturity cannot be simply solved using pen and paper. So I won't ask you to do that. Should that require you to do trials and errors? Okay, now let's examine the dynamic behavior of bond prices. So the bond price here is not the same thing as face value. So face value is the principal to be paid at the end. So we have three terms here. A bond is selling at a discount if the price is less than the face value. So when you see price smaller than the face value, we call that discount. If price the same as face value, we say that it's selling at par. And if price is greater than the face value, we call that bond is selling at premium. So why does it happen? So why do we see the bond price is different from the face value? That's because, simply put, coupon rate is not necessarily the same as yield to maturity. All right, so here I provide an intuitive explanation. I can then I'll do a quick illustration. So think about the interest only loans that we learned from week 5. When borrower makes periodic interest payment and the principal is paid at the termination of the loan, and this is what you call an interest only loans. So if the borrower just made sufficient payment to cover all interest generated in that period, then the outstanding loan balance will be the same as the principal to be repaid at the end. So in the context of a coupon paying bond, if coupon rate is less than yield to maturity, it means the issue of the bond does not make the sufficient payment to repay the interest in each period. And because the borrower does not pay the lender enough interest generated from the principal, it does not make sense for the lender to lend out the entire amount of principal, such that they would lend out a smaller amount. As a lender, the amount of money you're willing to lend out will be less than the face value. So let me give you a quick illustration. So let's just say over here we have a let's just say 10-year bond, annual bond, 01 to 10. And just for simplicity, and I just say the face value equals to $1,000. And let's say the yield to maturity here is 10%. And the coupon rate is 10%. Okay? Actually, let's move over here. Let's move the condition over here. All right, that's the first condition. So let's just say because here, the bond issuer is essentially a borrower, right? So let's just say here, you are the one that you're lending the money out. And yield to maturity 10% means that you require the interest rate to be paid back at 10%. So let's just say over here, let's say you lend out, here, that's you lend out 1,000. What is the interest rate generate over 1,000 for 1 year? Given that's 10%, given the yield to maturity is 10%, so 10% interest. That means you want $100 back, right? So considering this is an interest-only loan. So which means every period you're just gonna pay back the interest first. And so, okay, they now pay back $100, and you're happy. Next period, they still owe you 1,000, right? Because they haven't paid back the principal yet. So what is the interest rate generate from the yield from the coupon from this loan? It's gonna be 100, right? So all the way until the end, you have received $100 as an interest over that period from period 9, as well as $1,000 coming back as the principal, right? You're happy with that. And I just say over here, if that was a coupon paying bond, given this coupon paying bond face value is 1,000, the coupon rate is 10%. They will pay you 100, 100, 100, and 1,000. Sorry, 1,000, not 10,000. So 1,000. So from here you can see that the payment is the same. 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 So here, when the yield to maturity is the same as the coupon rate, are you happy? So the payment stream matches your expectation, right? The coupon paying bond pay you 100, and you want 100, and you're happy, right? You're happy, such that you're happy to lend out 1,000, right? You're happy to lend out 1,000. And let's give you a second scenario. 0, 1, 2, 9, and 10. Again, we have yield to maturity. Let's just use it right. Let's say yield to maturity here is 20%. I'm just making a very big number just to give you an idea. And the coupon rate is 10%. Let's use that. Use blue so that you don't get confused. 10%. All right. Let's just say here you lend out 1,000 because you want your yield to maturity is what your is a discount rate that you're expecting, right? So you want yield to maturity to be 20%. So that means with 20% yield to maturity, how much money you want back as interest? You want $200 interest. And after that, you want $200 interest because that they will have to pay you $200 back, right? All the way to 200 and 1,000 plus 200, right? But what does this coupon paying bond gives you? Coupon paying bond gives you 100, 100, 100, and 1,100. So if you make a comparison between what you want as a red writing, yield to maturity, right? You want 200, 200, 200, 200, and 1,200. But the coupon paying bond only gives you 100, 100, 100, 1,100. So here, do they give you enough? No, they don't give you enough, right? That is smaller than that, that is smaller than that, that's smaller than that. Because they're not giving you enough money. So which means you're not going to be lending them $1,000 for this payment. So you will be paying them a P that is a lot less than 1,000. And I explain why when yield to maturity is greater than coupon rate, the bond price is smaller than the face value, right? Because you want the red income stream, but they only give you the blue income stream. Is that and is the blue income stream more than the red one? No, it's smaller than the red one, such that because they're not gonna give you enough, so you're not going to lend them $1,000. You're gonna be lending them a smaller amount, and this $1,000 is essentially the price of the bond. It's the money that you're willing to lend out. Whereas in the previous case, the yield to maturity is the same as the coupon rate, so that the money that you're willing to lend out is the same as the face value, which is 1,000 over here. Okay, and you can easily derive a scenario for when yield to maturity is less than coupon rate. 1, 2, and 3. 3 different scenarios. Right? So this is something that you should definitely come up with your own intuitive way to understand it. Otherwise, you can memorize it. So over here, discount and premium, an increase in the required yield to maturity would decrease the present value of the cash flows and cause the bond to trade at a discount. So the higher the required yield to maturity, yield to maturity here essentially is what required from the bond buyer, from the one who is willing to lend the money to the bond seller. Actually, let me just do another quick diagram. That's something that I'm supposed to do at the start. So in a bond scenario, we have bond buyer, we have bond issuer. So bond buyer is the one that pays money, and that gives to the issuer. And the issuer then makes the payment back regularly, right? So essentially, so in a bond scenario, buyer of the bond is usually the lender, and issuer of the bond is usually the borrower. That's something I'm supposed to talk about at the start. But here, this is a very important concept, right? In a bond scenario, buyer is the one that buys the bond, and that money would then flow to issuer, because really bond is just a piece of paper, right? And in return, the issuer will make payments on a regular basis back to the buyer. So in this case, the buyer is actually the lender, is the one who is willing to lend the money out, where the borrower is the issuer. All right? So in this case, when the required yield to maturity increases, which means if the lender requires a higher return, if they require a higher return, and given the fixed income, which means you know what the future income stream is going to be, because the face value is all determined, the coupon payment is all determined, and that means a higher the interest rate, the lower the bond price. That means the less willing you are going to be willing to them at the same amount, so you'll be willing to lend them at a lower amount. And vice versa, the decrease in the required yield to maturity will increase the present value of the cash flows and cause the bond to trade at a premium. And most coupon bonds have a coupon rate so that the bonds will initially trade at or very close to its face value, which is at par. So when we say that the bond's trading at above par or at a premium, and this occurs when the bond price is greater than the face value, and this is when coupon rate is greater than yield to maturity. When we say something is trading at par, that means the bond price is the same as the face value. And that implies, this is a very important relationship, when something is trading at par, it implies that the coupon rate is the same as the yield to maturity. And this is where most coupon paying bond will be trading to start with, right, at par. When the bond price is less than the face value, we say that trading below par or at a discount, and this is where the yield to maturity, what you demand from the borrower, is greater than what they pay you back on a periodic basis, right? So here's an example. We want to determine the discount or premium of a coupon bond. So consider 3 30-year bonds with annual coupon payments that are all paying annual coupon payment. One bond has a 10% coupon rate, one has a 5% coupon rate, and one has a 3% coupon rate. If the yield to maturity of each bond is 5%, what is the price of each bond per $100 face value? Which bond trades at a premium? So in this case, we're given N, which is 30. We're given N is 30. And we're given yield to maturity is 5%. The face value is 100. And then each bond has a different coupon payment. So for bond 1, 10% coupon, that 10 coming from 100 face value times coupon rate 10% divided by 1, because it's 1 coupon per year. So if you're using the equation to calculate, to solve, you get a price for the first one is 176.86. 5% is 100. 3% is $69.26. So not surprisingly, we arrive at something that we already sort of like understand intuitively, which is when the coupon rate is a lot higher than yield to maturity, which means if the bond pays you a high interest payment than what the bond buyer is expecting, then they are willing to pay a higher price for that, which is why it's called trading at a premium. If 5% coupon is the same as a 5% yield to maturity, if the bond is paying you back at the same rate as what you're demanding, then it's trading at par. Then the price is the same as the face value. And if the bond rate, coupon rate, the interest payment coming back from the coupon is smaller than what you demand for, like in a third scenario where the yield to maturity is only 5%, yield to maturity is 5%, is greater than the coupon rate is smaller than the yield to maturity, then in that case, you're not going to be willing to lend them as much money. So which means the bond price, which is the money going to be lending to them, is going to be trading at a discount. And that is this scenario over here, except that I use some bigger numbers like 20%, 10%. And if you're not sure, please definitely rewind the video and go back to the 5 minutes ago and listen to that again, right? Are now gonna be examining some advanced topics in bond. So we're gonna talk about time and bond price. We will just briefly cover a concept called duration that will be further investigated in your second year unit duration. But we're not gonna talk about duration or convexity in details in this unit. And then we talk about corporate bond, credit ratings, and then lastly we talk about bond arbitrage. All right. So time and bond prices. Assuming the yield to maturity, which assuming the investor's expected rate of return does not change, does the bond always have the same price if the yield to maturity does not change? So which means, let's say company A issued a bond yesterday and the bond price was say 1,000, and the bond is going to be maturing in 10 years time. 1 year later, do you expect the bond price to be the same as a year ago? Or 2 years ago? 3 years ago? Well, no. It's because money has a time value and cash flows become more valuable as the time to receiving time then decreases. So which means, I just say company A issue a bond 1 year ago and it's a 10-year bond. And 1 year later, you're now 9 years away from receiving the bigger principal at the end. Because time value has a money, time has a value, and you're now getting closer to receiving that big amount of money, which means is now the bond is actually becomes a lot more valuable. So up until now, we have been assuming that the next payment is in one period's time, but we need to be able to value at any point in time, which means the n here is not always an integer. So holding all other things constant, the price of a bond will move towards par value across time. Okay, let's just have a look at an example so you will get it. So consider a 30-year bond with 10% coupon rate, annual payments to make it easier, and $100 face value. What is the initial price of this bond if it has a 5% yield to maturity? If the yield to maturity is unchanged, what would the price be immediately before and after the first coupon is paid? All right. So let's draw a timeline. So here we have a 30-year bond with annual payment. And initially we'll pay a bond price. At the end, we'll receive face value plus coupon payment. And coupon payment here equals to what? 100 face value times coupon rate, which is 10% divided by 1, because it's only one payment per year, so that's $10. So the income stream is like this. I'll use this color. So you would receive $10, $10, and then $10, and then $10 plus 100, right? So the first question is, what is the initial price if it has a 5% yield to maturity? So the initial price here is price equals to coupon payment times 1 over U to maturity, 1 plus U to maturity, power to n. What's the n here? N here is 30 because initial price, right? Plus 100 divided by 1 plus U to maturity, power to 30. And the U to maturity here, as the question given us, is, let's have a look, I forgot, it's 5%, right? 5%. And you can just plug it in and you can solve it, and the answer is 176.86. And this is greater than face value. Why? It's because our U to maturity is less than the coupon rate. U to maturity is 5%, and the coupon rate is 10%. So if the bond paying you higher payment than what you demand for, this is what you demand, then the price is gonna be greater than the face value. Okay. So, and the next question is what we're interested in. The next question is saying, if the U to maturity is unchanged, what will the price be immediately before and after the first coupon is paid? So which means you are now essentially now here, right? Because you're moving to time 1 where the payment is about to be made, right? And when you're saying, let's give you a scenario, immediately before the first coupon, if it's immediately before the first coupon, then the timeline is this. So here, 1, 2, 29, and 30. Because people don't like starting from something with non-zero. Let's just make that as perspective 0, because 1, 0, 1, 28, 29. Remember here we're saying that's immediately before the first coupon. So that means essentially we are here, right? We're here. All right. So what is your income stream? The income stream here is that because you haven't made the first coupon payment yet, you haven't received it yet, but you're about to receive it, that means you will get $10 almost straight away. Actually, let me just write that $10 again. You will get $10 here, $10 here, $10, $10, and 100, right? That's what your income stream looks like. So that means here, what's the price immediately before the first coupon? That equals to what we learned from the workshop is that, well, this isn't an annuity, but if we're just focusing on the blue line, that is an annuity. So that means the price equals to an annuity y times 1 plus minus 1 plus y power to, what's the power here? How many payments in this annuity? 29, right? 29 payments, right? Plus, of course, you have a payment at time 0. You're about to receive it. You haven't received it just yet. So which means we shouldn't forget about it. And of course, very important, you have $100 at the end. And that's 29 as well, because that's 29 periods, right? There's 3 components in there. And where y equals to 5%, and you can just write it as that is 185.71. And this is the price immediately before the first coupon. But how about what's the price immediately after the first coupon? So that's immediately after the first coupon. So again, you are here, right? But it looks very similar to the above timeline, except, and because people don't like 1, let's say start with 0, 1, 29, right? That's the equivalent timeline. And because because the first coupon just made, you can no longer claim that coupon payment, right? Because you already made. When you sell this coupon to someone else, you can't just say, well, there's going to be a payment now. Well, because you already received it. So which means you will have $0 here, but $10 here, 10 and 100 and 100. Sorry, I just realized I made a slight typo here. That's it. There should be 10 over there, which is the same thing over here. $10, right? And the key difference here is that here is $10, here is 0, because you can't claim that coupon anymore because you already played. And the price of this equals to what? Equals to this annuity plus the single cash flow at the end, but nothing at the start, right? Nothing at the start. Nothing at the start because you already paid. So which means that equals to $10 times 1 over y times 1 minus 1 plus y pound to 29. Why 29? 29 payments, right? Plus here the green part just to show you that is 0 because you can't claim that same payment again, plus the red part, which is 100, the face value to be received at the end, where y equals to 5%. And that equals to 175.71, which is exactly $10 smaller. So that means the price immediately before will be $10 more than the price immediately after the first coupon payment. That's very straightforward, right? Because you can't claim the same payment again, and that payment is about to be made. All right. So here you can read the solution attached in the lecture note, and you can read it, blah blah blah. But why is that important? It helps you understand this effect of time on bond prices. So let's just say, looking at this top line here. So on the x-axis, that tells you here, 30 is the maturity, right? You're approaching the maturity at the end, 30. On the y-axis, it tells you the bond price as a percentage of face value. So which means if it's 180, that means if face value is 100, the price will be $180, right? So you see this zigzag. The reason why here, if it's upward sloping over here along this line, upward sloping, yeah, let's just focus on that. That part of upward sloping is because time value of money. You're now getting closer to your maturity, which means each individual payment of your coupon as well as your face value, be received at the end, is gonna get bigger, right? Because you're about to receive them. And it peaked at this point, and this peak at this point here, well, I can even zoom in even further. The peak at this point here, it shows you that is the price immediately before you receive the coupon, the first coupon. But after you receive the coupon, the value of that drops exactly by $10. Drop by here, in this case, the coupon payment, right? So you can see that the bond price would increase up to a point where that's just immediately before the first payment, and then after the payment is made, you drop to a value that you can no longer claim that coupon. And the same thing goes again as you're approaching to the maturity. It goes up again because you're getting closer to receive your next payment as well as every other payment. But as soon as you receive that payment, you're gonna drop back, right? So, and that's why you explain the zigzag is on the downward trend because you can no longer claim the coupon that you already claimed. And you will approach to the face value because the face value is the last single large payment that you'll be receiving at the end, right? In comparison, you don't see the zigzag in zero coupon. You will just have an upward sloping curve because you're getting closer for the zero coupon. You're getting closer to receiving your face value, right? That's time value of money. Getting closer, the value of that is bigger
bigger and bigger. All right. So now we talk about, or briefly cover duration. So here, duration means that there is an inverse relationship between interest rates and bond prices. And as interest rate and bond price rise, as interest rate and bond use, which is yield to maturity, rises, bond price fall. As interest rate and bond use fall, bond price rise. And we have the sensitivity of bond price to changes in interest rate is measured by the bond's duration. So in your future unit, you will have a proper definition for duration. But here, we'll just be focusing on a few factors over here. A bond with high durations means they're highly sensitive to interest rate changes. With low durations, that means they're less sensitive to interest rate changes. And what we're focusing on is two characteristics of bond. The first one is the term to maturity, and the second one is coupon payment. So here we're saying the longer term to maturity, they're gonna be a higher duration for the bond to be having an impact from interest rate risk. On the other hand, if you have a higher coupon payment, the interest rate risk will be smaller. All right, let's have a look at a few numerical examples. So here, let's first of all look at the maturity. So consider a 10-year coupon bond and a 30-year coupon bond. Everything else is the same, is that you have the same coupon rate, and of course here risk-free. And the question is, what percentage will the price of each bond change if its yield to maturity increase from 5% to 6%? So they both start with the 5% yield to maturity. So in this case, with a 10% coupon rate, and we haven't really specified a face value, but I just say it's 100. So if face value is 100, coupon rate is 10%, so you would get $10 every year. You get $10 every year. And for the 10-year bond, the bond price will be 138.61. For a 30-year bond, the price will be 176.86. Of course, one of them is bigger than the other because 30-year bond, you'll receive a lot more coupons, right? And for 6%, so if the interest rate, your required rate of return goes up by 1%. If it goes up by 1%, what do you expect? High required rate of return, that means the bond price will fall because now you require higher return from this bond, such that you are less willing to lend them the same amount of money as before. So numerically, 6% will translate to a 10-year bond at $129.644, whereas for a 30-year bond, if you trust the math over there, the bond price will fall to $155. So the price of a 10-year bond changes by that. So here, in terms of percentage, for a 1% change, for 1% increase in yield to maturity, the bond price will fall by 6.6% for a 10-year bond, whereas for a 30-year bond, it's gonna fall by 12.3%. So you can see that the longer the maturity, the more sensitive is for a yield change. All right, in this second example, we're focusing on how the coupon rate changes affect the interest rate sensitivity. So here we have two bonds, each pays semi-annual coupons, and 5 years left until maturities. There will be 10 payments. One has a coupon rate of 5%, and the other has a coupon rate of 10%. But both currently have a yield to maturity of 8%. So in this case, given that they're paying semi-annual coupons, so the first coupon will be paying 2.5% of face value every 6 months. The second bond will be paying half of 10%, which is 5% of the face value every 6 months. So given that yield to maturity is 8%, the first bond has a price of $87.83. The second one has a price of $108.11. And given the change of yield to maturity goes from 8% to 7%, so yield to maturity decreases. If it decreases, the price should go up because the required rate of return from the investor goes down. They're happy to pay a higher price. So in this case, not surprisingly, both bond price increases. For a 5% coupon bond, 2.5% every 6 months, it goes from $87 to $91. For a 10% semi-annual bond, which is 5% every 6 months, the price goes from $108 to $112. So the change in coupon price, the change in bond price is 4.4% for the first bond, whereas 4% for the second one. So here, this example illustrates that the higher the coupon rate, the less sensitive coming from the change in interest rate. You would say, why is that the case? Well, it could be because given that you're paying a higher coupon payment, a lot of that has been diversified out. So which means that a lot of money term, like you getting a first coupon payment, second coupon payment, a next one until the end, because you're paying out a larger amount of coupon every period. That diversify a little bit of interest rate risk, such that you are less sensitive to an interest rate change. Okay, but that's all we need to know about duration in this scenario. The first scenario is the time to maturity. The longer the time to maturity, the more sensitive it is. The second one is the coupon rate. The larger the coupon rate, the less the sensitivity to interest rate change. Okay, so we got two more topics. The first one is corporate bond. The second one is bond arbitrage. So in corporate bonds, so here corporate bonds are the one issued by corporations. Because corporations do not exist forever, they have business risk, they can't print their own money, and such that it's quite typically that a corporate bond has a risk of default. And investors pay less for bonds with credit risk than they would for an otherwise identical default-free bond, because credit risk is an extra risky component such that they would have a higher required rate of return. The higher required rate of return translates to a lower bond price given the same face value, coupon payments, and term structure. All right, so the yield of bond with credit risk would be higher than that of otherwise identical default-free bonds. And so there are several companies that rate credit worthiness of bonds and make this information available to investors. So, and by consulting these ratings, what the investors can actually access the credit worthiness of a particular bond issue. And that would be based on, for example, the profitability, how risky the money is going to be used on various different projects, and what is the financial strength of the company, right? So the ratings therefore encourage widespread investor participation in a relatively liquid market. So in Australia, unfortunately, we don't have a very liquid bond market, corporate bond market, and we don't have too many local rating agencies. So internationally, there are two best-known bond rating companies. The first one is Standard & Poor's, S&P. The second one is Moody's. We also have Fitch, but so we could talk the top three, right? And so bonds, they have different ways to classify each category of the bond ratings. So, but we usually decompose them into two categories. The first one is investment grade bonds, and the second grade is speculative bonds, right? Or also known as junk bonds, because of the likelihood of default. So the rating depends on the risk of bankruptcy and a bondholder's claim to asset in the event of bankruptcy, which means that if you are a buyer of a bond, if you're the lender of the money, and if they have a lot of, if the issuer have a lot of collaterals and liquid collaterals, that means in the event of bankruptcy, there's a higher chance for you to get some money back, and that would have an impact to credit risk, right? So here's a term that we're gonna be used later on in your exams and in your exercises. It's called credit spread, also known as default spread. So credit spread is defined as the difference between the yields of the corporate bonds and the yields of treasury bonds in a credit spread. The treasury bonds is issued by the treasury, and as they are for most countries, for most developed countries, especially US, they're meant to be default free, because the government can always get the Fed to print more money, right? So it's less likely for them to default. So such that when we define credit spread, it is a term saying what is the yield to maturity for company A and what is the yield to maturity for the treasury bond of the country, and the difference, because usually the yield to maturity for corporate bond is a lot higher, and the difference is known as a credit spread, right? And the credit spreads fluctuate as perceptions regarding the probability of default change. because sometimes there's going to be a systematic event happen to an economy, like what's happening in COVID-19, what we're currently experiencing, that suddenly there's a big business risk about there's not going to be enough supply, there's not going to be enough demand, and such that a company now cannot actually make the payment, and the default spread may actually increase. So here, you don't actually have to memorize these bond ratings per se. So here is just a quick description of what Moody defines as investment grade debt. So there are 4 subcategories in investment grade debt. It's AAA, AA, BAA. The slight difference goes to the Standard & Poor's is AAA in capital letters, AAA, and BBB, right? And if a company lost its rating of BBB, that could be a catastrophic event for the bondholders, because that just means the bond price will fall, because when they go onto a speculative bond category, the yield to maturity becomes a lot higher because of higher default risk. Higher risk, higher required rate of return, lower price. So which means for whoever is currently holding the bond, they just bought a bond before, they're holding the bond. If there's an increase in yield to maturity, that means the bond price will fall. That means they become less off, or like worse off, right? So there are 5 subcategories of speculative bonds. And you just need to know them. Such things exist. And here is a very interesting question. So this is a weekly game trivia. So who pays for the credit ratings by Moody and S&P? If you're not sure what that question is asking, so think about this, right? Moody and S&P provide these credit ratings, but given that there's a lot of effort involved in examining a company's financial strengths, examining the kind of business rate they're currently operating in, the new project, how they're gonna new project use the proceed to use the money for, and that means it's a non-trivial activity. Who's gonna pay for that? Well, or this is the time you can pause the video, you can go look up online. Let me give you, before I go through the answer, right? Let me give you a scenario. Imagine you're buying a camera, right? There are so many different camera brands like Canon, Nikon, Olympus, Leica, which is one of my favorite brands. I mean, I like all of them, Fujifilm. And let's just say let's just say there's a new camera coming out, and it's Sony A7R5. For example, which hasn't come out yet, right? Let's just say this new camera came out, and you want to say, how good is that camera? I'm not sure. Let me go to one of the reviewer website. And here there are 2 websites for you to choose. There's one website that is sponsored by Sony, and clearly they're operated by Sony fanboys. And I mean, if we do have people love Sony, don't worry. I'm not hating Sony at all. I mean, I love Sony. And they have so many dark technology that is so advanced ahead of everyone else. But here, let's just think about it. There's 2 websites. One of them is backed by Sony. Sony sponsored them. The other one is not backed by anyone. It's an independent reviewer, right? So here, both websites published an article about this new camera, A7R5. Which one would you trust more? Are you gonna trust more about the one that published by the Sony sponsored website or the independent one? I guess the answer would be pretty straightforward, that given it's sponsored by Sony, is very likely, I'm not saying they would definitely be, but they're very likely, they are very hard to maintain a very unbiased opinion. So which means that somehow their review will be more biased towards saying Sony is a good camera. But whereas in the independent website, because they're independent, because they get their fees charged from someone else. For example, like you as a subscriber, you have to make a payment to the website. So in that case, it's more likely that they'll come up with more independent review. And if you get that example, you can see the analogy over here, right? As an investor, as a bond investor, I want to buy a bond because I want to get a return from a company, a fixed return. I want to get that. So let's just say, if I know that the credit rating is something that I want to evaluate the credit risk for, if the credit rating is actually paid by the company, BHP or Commonwealth Bank, right? If it's actually paid by the company, is that likely for them to be more biased or less biased? Comparing to, let's say, if I subscribe to someone who does this independent of the company, that I'm happy to pay some subscription fee to that person who helped me review the credit rating of BHP. Who's actually gonna be more independent or more unbiased? Well, you would say again, like the camera case would be the second person, but unfortunately, that's not what we have today in the financial market, right? So let's have a look. So when John Moody began issuing credit ratings for railroad companies in 1909, both Moody and S&P generated revenue by selling ratings directly to investors, which means originally they were like the second example of the website, the independent website, right? They based on a subscription basis. Is the customer pay for it, which means here investor pay model was free of any conflicts of interest and helped build both agencies' reputation. However, in 1968, everything changed. They now move on to an issuer pay, such that the ratings will be made free to investors, but the company here being the issuer, right? The issuer is the one that issues the bond, sells the bond, which means they can borrow the money from the proceed, right? So it actually becomes the company who actually gonna pays for it, right? You can see now it's less likely to be free of any conflict because the company, both credit rating agency we playing this kind of game theory, right? Because if they give them too low a rating, the company may go to someone else, and more importantly, the fee structure with these ratings is that the higher the rating the company is given, the more fee the Moody or S&P can charge them, right? This is actually was testified in front of Congress back in 2008 after the global financial crisis, that people were shockingly discovered that Moody and S&P would charge a higher fee if they given out a higher credit rating. So you can see here it is very difficult for you to argue this is free of any conflicts of interest. But anyway, so this example just illustrates that whatever that we see in the share market or the equity market or the financial market today in general, it doesn't mean it's the right way to go, right? You always need to think about why that's the case. After all, Moody and S&P are for-profit companies. They're listed companies. They want to generate revenue. Fair enough. All right, here's a paper related to what we just discussed. It's published in one of the top journals in finance, Journals of Financial Economics, and you can read it in your own time. And the article title is this: Does it matter who pays for credit ratings? Historical evidence. All right, feel free to read it. It's available on the UWA library website through OneSearch. All right, anyway, so here now let's look at an example of just focusing on credit spreads and see how that would change the bond price. So here your firm has a credit rating of AA, not AAA, not a best, but it's close to be the best for a company. You notice that the credit spread for 10-year maturity debt is 90 basis points. A basis point corresponds to 0.01%. So that's 0.0001. Your firm's 10-year debt has a coupon rate of 5%. You see that new 10-year treasury bond is usually AAA, right? Are being issued at par with a coupon rate of 4.5%. What should be the price of your outstanding 10-year bonds? So in this example, there's a lot of information. First of all, there's a credit spread. Credit spread here tells you that your bond has a higher yield to maturity than the treasury bond, right? And how about treasury bond? What is its yield to maturity? So here you're saying are being issued at par with a coupon rate of 4.5%. What does at par mean? At par means the coupon rate is the same as yield to maturity. So that tells you the yield to maturity for a 10-year treasury bond is 4.5%. And your company's bond is 90 basis point higher than 4.5%. That tells you the yield to maturity for your bond is 5.4%, right? 5.4%. And here we are looking at I think I'm missing one part of information. So here, this is actually a semi-annual bond. We shouldn't assume that it's a semi-annual bond, even though semi-annual bond is probably the most popular type of bond. I should have put it in the example here. This one is a semi-annual bond, right? This one should be a semi-annual bond. So bear that in mind. So that means everything needs to divide by 2. So given that your coupon rate is 5% every year, so that means that it's gonna be $2.5 every 6 months. So here again, that is my mistake not mentioning that this is a semi-annual bond. But here it is a semi-annual bond, right? Semi-annual bond, that means you're gonna get $2.5 every 6 months, and your yield to maturity here comes from 4.5% plus the credit spread, which is 0.9%. That gives you 5.4%. Right? So the yield to maturity is 5.4% every year, and every 6 months will be 2.7%. So that's always expressing APR, right? So the rest is straightforward. Each coupon payment is 2.5, the yield to maturity is 2.7%, and it's 10 years left. With a semi-annual coupon paying bond, that would be 20 payments. So that means the bond price is $96.94. All right. So comparing to the treasury bond currently issuing at par, that means treasury bond has a price of 100. So your bond actually even though your bond offers a higher coupon than the treasury bond, but because you have a higher yield to maturity, given there's a default risk, that you are selling at a lower price, right? Okay. And now this is the extra bit of bond arbitrage. So this bond arbitrage is just a revisit of what you did with Daniel in week 3. That remember there was an exercise in tutorial exercise talking about arbitrage, talking about law of one price. So now because now we have introduced about zero coupon paying bond, let's just revisit the examples that we had before. So in week 5 we talk about the interest rate always changes. That means, you know, if you go to the bank today and if you say I'm gonna put money in for 1 year, they give you a 1-year rate. But if you decide to put a term deposit for 2 years, most likely they will give you a higher interest rate per year. That's what we call term structure, right? Because there's different interest rate every year. So, you know, in real life, we call that 1-year rate as a 1-year zero rate, means a 1-year zero coupon rate, right? A 2-year zero coupon rate and a 3-year zero coupon rate. In all the cases that we have examined so far, so 1 year's coupon rate, 2-year coupon rate, say 3-year coupon rate, we've been assuming that the term structure is flat. So that means in week 5, we always just assume that the interest rate is the same every year, right? We're not gonna change this. But here, let's just say, what if the interest rate does vary? And how do we actually price this? So we can construct a zero coupon bond portfolio. Say here we have a 3-year $1,000 bond that pays 10% annual coupon using 3 zero coupon bonds. So if you're looking at a coupon bond, the payment is gonna be, well, the first coupon is gonna be 1 year's time, is 100. The second one is 100. The third one is 1100. And that can be seen as this coupon bond is equivalent to a zero coupon bond portfolio by buying $100 worth of 1-year zero coupon bond, $100 worth of a 2-year zero coupon bond, and $1,100 of $1,100 worth of 3-year zero coupon bond. Okay, so we can obtain this yield to maturity curve from the market, and what tells us the zero coupon bonds price. So here, given that a 1-year yield to maturity is 3.5%, that's corresponding to, if it's $100 face value, the price for that zero coupon bond will be 96.62. For 2 years, that'll be $92.45 for every $100 worth of face value, and 3 years and 4 years and so on. So that means in this case, to price this 3-year coupon bond, it could be treated as one of the 1-year $100 worth of zero coupon bond, one of 2-year $100 worth of bond, and 11 of 3 years of $100 face value coupon bond, zero coupon bond. So that means in this case, the total cost is 1153 by simply summing up 96.62 plus 92.45 plus 11 times 86, 7.63, and that is the bond price. Why is that the case? Because that will give you the same payout as the coupon bond. For the coupon bond, year one, it pays you 100, just like the 1 year zero coupon bond, right? And that's done. Year two, it will pay you another 100, and that's just like a 2 year zero bond, where no payment at any other time, but only 100 at time two. And in time three, you get your 100 plus your $7 face value. That's just like buying 11 of 3 year zero bond, because that will give you 11 times 100, 1100 at the end, right? So that means, given that the price is given that the payout is the same, the price of those two portfolios should be the same. And this is what we call replicating, because replicating the payout, right? The price of a coupon bond must equal the present value with coupon payment and face value. So here, the present value equals to the bond cash flows discounted by the individual yield to maturity. So as an alternative approach, I mean, really, it is equivalent mathematically, but as an alternative approach, you can also use the information about the yield to maturity rather than just use the price of the zero coupon bond. You can use the yield to maturity, because 1 year means 1 year interest rate is 3.5% per year. 2 years, 4% means 4% every year for 2 years, right? So that means you can also use that one to work it out, 100 over 1.04 squared, and the third year will be 1100 divided by the 3-year rate, which is 4.5%, 1 plus 0.045 power to 3. And that also gives you 1153. Not a surprise that that's the same answer as what we did before. And based on that, you can work out the yield to maturity for this particular coupon paying bond. Again, that needs to use Excel spreadsheet. You would need to go seek function to work out what interest rate would make the right-hand side equals to the left-hand side. And the answer here is 4.44%. That tells you the yield to maturity for this particular bond is 4.44%, right? All right. So make sure that so next week we'll cover valuing equity instruments. That will be after the 2-week break. But please make sure that if you haven't done any My Finance Lab test, please do it, because now it worth 30%. And I may see some of you in next online mock exam next Monday. Stay safe.